Well, when we first started, actually it was a personal decision that I needed to buy into a business, and there was nothing available around in terms of business financing on an interest-free basis. And when we talked about it, people wanted a certain level of return, and it's got a guaranteed return. So that spurred me on to sort of think about, well, can we do something in a small way? And then another friend of mine came along and he said, look, somebody owes me money, he's not paying it back. Can you, not beat him up, but can you talk to him and let's do something about this? So that spurred me on to say, look, if I'm, and by the way, a relative of mine, he stopped speaking to me because I had the audacity to ask back for a loan I'd given him. So we needed to set something up. And there were enough people, friends, who were in similar situations. So we started to pool monies together, and from that pooling, the people could take an interest-free loan. And we realized, hold on, you know, this was happening all over the country. So people needed help, and this is where it all came about. But what one of the barriers was, we had to be careful, is this deposit taking? And that brings in other angles. And then the second thing is, you know, consumer credit lending, legal agreements, compliancy, and this is all when the lending we give is not making any money whatsoever. So this is a huge issue. But alhamdulillah, we've been operating for 25 years now.
We're very charitable. We're part of the Muslim community in the UK. We've had amazing figures in terms of what they give. But when it comes to giving money to help people in financial distress, there always seems to be a bit of hesitancy. Has this been your experience?
It has. As we've been saying, there's plenty of zakatable giving, and for disasters, emergency relief, there's plenty of giving, and the Muslim community is very, very far ahead of most people, most communities. When it comes to helping somebody with a personal loan, it's quite another matter. Especially, I've only got experience in the UK, and living here, people think, well, they get benefits, so they shouldn't be in that position. One thing to make people realize really is that it wasn't only people in poverty that we're talking about. It's people in decent incomes, but their expenses, for whatever reason, are not sustainable. So there's a lot of education about how people are living. And also, they come into a problem where they need just a loan because some emergency situations cropped up. So we are not only giving to people on the poverty line, we're giving to people who we've given to GPs.
How can you roll that out to the rest of the UK?
As I stated earlier, we start with just a few friends getting together and discussing the issue. So there's a lot of trust within the founding members and the trustees. And when we exhausted our friends and relatives to be part of this initiative, others were saying, well, how can we trust these people? And we registered as a company by guarantee, we registered as a charity, we're with the Financial Conduct Authority, but they still say, how can we trust these people with donations to give it out to the right sort of people, to where it's needed? So trust is a big issue. So that's why it's restricted. That's why I don't feel we can possibly roll it out too far and wide. It needs smaller groups to take the model and develop it like that into different parts of the country.
Iqbal, why?
I'd just like to add on.
With the experience of these 30-40 years, it has shown that it did not clearly demark from the conventional banking because of some constraint. Sometimes it's not to be blamed, but the system itself did not help the Islamic banking to move comfortably towards the risk-sharing perspective, because it's unfair to ask the customer to apply for risk-sharing. He will risk all his capital, but at the end the rate of return is the same. It's even from the equitable perspective, it's unfair to do it to the customer. That's why you will find many banks that they are moving away from the musharaka, the mudaraba, towards tawarruq. Unfortunately, because of the ecosystem that they are governing Islamic finance. That's why the alternative is either, of course, we will strive to do some adjustments within the existing banking system, but there are huge opportunities to the non-banking system. From Islamic perspective, the Qard Hassan, and as you mentioned, the Waqf. Now we have, ISRA has done an extensive research on the potential of Waqf, and we realized that we were discussing the 1 trillion assets of Waqf. This is all, most of them, they are physical assets. But because of the evolvement of the discussion of cash Waqf, which became prevalent before, there was a huge argument among scholars whether cash Waqf is Sharia compliant or eligible or not. Of course, the only madhab school of law that they supported the cash Waqf is the Maliki and the late Hanafi. But now it's a prevailing Sharia opinion from IOFI, from Fiqh Academy, that cash Waqf is something Sharia compliant. Now, if you add to this 1 trillion asset, the cash Waqf, and there was a study saying that the housewife in Saudi Arabia alone, they have around 80 billion riyal in cash, which is around 20 billion USD. And we have done research for IDB, and we are doing consultation for IDB to issue cash Waqf sukuk, either temporary or permanent cash Waqf. And we did even present to them that those housewives, if we will tell them that if you contribute part of your cash Waqf to this, your deposit saving into cash Waqf, you will not need to pay the 2.5% zakat. So which means the least that they will gain at the end of the year is 2.5% profit. But now those are the opportunities. There is huge, since there is now no issue among scholars about the cash Waqf as a mean of financing, and we have conducted recently with World Bank and NCF a roundtable that has ended with an excellent report. I advise you to read the report. We realized that it can compete. Now the banking sector, it has 2 trillion. Now you can speak about the Waqf sector, which is non-banking, it will have more than 2 trillion. And it's, to some extent, it has the religious motivation and the economic motivation. Those are the potentiality. Now the challenges is, first of all, the mindset of people that are still stick to the permanent, to immovable assets. Second, the issue of governance. Because people, they are willing, we have done a study, they are willing to contribute in cash Waqf, either sukuk or fund or whatever it is, but they need to see a clear transparency and disclosure, and also the governance. That's why the legislation in terms of Waqf, it has to be robust. Sharia governance has to be sound to give a comfort to the participant. Plus, Malaysia, they are leading in terms of collaborating with private sectors, because the issue in many countries, Waqf is governed by the government, and they don't have professionals. But in Malaysia, the Tower of Bank Islam, which is based on Waqf land, it's a collaboration between private and religious organization. It was a successful project of 152 million, which is around 50 million USD. So the governance, the usage of latest technology. Now with some companies, we are collaborating in having blockchain of Waqf distribution and collection. We have also preparing a blockchain of Waqf, also, of Zakat and Waqf. Those are all the challenges that we need to meet. And I can say that with the awareness, with the religious motivation, with the governance, with the professional approach of this Waqf, it's a huge potential.
With those laws and regulations, they cannot alone guarantee the effective revival of the Waqf institution of Waqf. The much softer kind of element is required to ensure the long-term sustainability of Waqf institution, and by that I mean the trust.
Yeah.
The trust can be only established through the actions of responsible individuals and the financial institutions collectively. So more needs to be done through public awareness, speeches, to encourage donors and all stakeholders in the ecosystem of the Waqf to ensure its sustainability. we talked about Islamic social finance, and this is being recognized also globally. Now we need to find a ways to unlock its full potential, and this is being done through the research, I believe.
Excellent. That's actually been quite a consistent theme today around education, education, and I guess also re-education in terms of understanding things from a different perspective, different paradigms, looking at how to achieve the social outcomes we need. If you go from an outcomes basis, what are the different ways to achieve those outcomes, as opposed to here are the vehicles we have and this is what we're going to achieve with it. So I think that makes absolute sense. Milton Friedman famously said that there is one and only one social responsibility of business: to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits, so long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say engages in open and free competition without deception or fraud. So how do you challenge that in terms of social responsibility and the work you're doing promoting clean fuel?
Cool, that's a question. Well, I think I'm going to disagree with Milton. Look, I think the world's very different now to what it was maybe 50, certainly 100 years ago. Stakeholders, and by stakeholders I mean investors, I mean customers, I mean society in general, expect a change. They expect companies to act responsibly. It's not about just making money anymore. It can't be, because we've seen what short-termism does. And I think as society becomes more and more educated in the benefits of sharing the outputs of companies and reinvesting them in the long term, so that it filters down and so it closes out inequalities among society, I think we're all starting to realise the benefits. So in the last 5 years, you've seen some big corporations stand up and say, right, we're going to make a difference here. We're going to start reinvesting some of our profits to do good. And my colleagues from CIMB and Gatehouse earlier said, you can see straight away that there is a change coming about now. So, I'm from what is effectively a very small alternative investment company, Octopus, but I think we're one of many, and I can see this becoming more and more the norm. And it's not purely altruistic. There's a very valid commercial reason why companies are starting to behave this way, because for the long-term success of that company, it's good to reinvest profits and it's good to reinvest time in society. So you can see that the alignment of interest is only growing, and I think it's something to be applauded, if I'm honest.
Excellent. Just for everyone's information, actually, because we had a lot of discussions about banks being the right vehicles, and excuse the pun, but one of the projects that Daniel actually spearheaded was Sharia compliant financing for black taxis, which are part of London's iconography, that they're clean fuel, and you can purchase one with Sharia compliant financing. What was actually quite different about it was the structure that was used was very innovative. It was a profit share per mile. So for taxi drivers, they will purchase, they cost between 90 and 100,000 pounds, which is obviously quite a lot of money. But per mile, they would share the profit with Octopus. So sometimes when you're not in an industry, you can look at problems from a different angle.